The gap between most real estate agents and great real estate agents is widening. It seems like every single day. Now, in this video, I'm gonna break down two different stories that I heard this week. One was from a consumer that I talked to in the marketplace. The other one was from an agent that's on our team that we had a conversation while we were reviewing offers on one of our listings. Now, the major point here is this gap that I'm talking about between most agents and great agents. The gap is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But there's a few major reasons why. Now, let me start with the first story. And I want to get into this because I was talking with one of my neighbors in my neighborhood that I live in, and there's a home that sold in the neighborhood. And I knew that it sold, and he asked me, hey, did you see what it sold for? He's like, I couldn't believe the price. And I actually, believe it or not, in the business, didn't even know what it sold for. And he shared the price with me, and I'm like, oh, that's not surprising. And he was shocked that I wasn't shocked over the price. Now, for reference, the home sold for about $150,000 below market value, or about 10% below market value. The home sold for about 1.4 in that ballpark. And he was upset about it because that sale affected the value of the real estate in the rest of the neighborhood, right? So his home's value was directly affected. And frankly, anybody in the neighborhood that's going to refinance recently or is thinking about selling now has a low comp in their neighborhood. So not great, but he was upset about it. But he was concerned or shocked that I wasn't shocked by the price. And he's like, well, our price is falling. No, that's not it at all. And when he asked me why it sold for the price that it did, I said, easy, terrible marketing. And what terrible marketing comes down to several different factors. So for this particular home, and I'm using very broad because it's in my neighborhood, and I certainly didn't, like we as a company did not represent the sale, but I'll try to be relatively broad. But when I said terrible marketing, there were several things that happened. So if you look at the timeline of any sale of the property, you have some sort of preparation. Even if there's no preparation, that was the choice for prep. Then you have the launch of the listing and how it's advertised. And then you have the actual negotiation itself that goes into closing. So if we start with preparation, there was no preparation whatsoever done for the home. They literally, the tenants moved out of the property. There was zero work done. I think the landscaper might have come, but it didn't look like it, let's put it that way. And the home was put on the market. I live very close to this house, and I didn't, and I'm in the business. I didn't even know that was my neighbor's house when I saw it in the MLS. Living in the neighborhood, didn't know it was for sale. And then when it was marketed for access, one of the major things, here's a few different bullet points. Number one, no preparation to the house whatsoever. Even literally to the extent that the garbage cans were in the driveway the entire time it was for sale. There was trash in the front yard and in the backyard the entire time it was listed for sale. Meaning the seller didn't care about it and the agent didn't care about it. So that happened, one. So you go to, that's the preparation. Now, when it comes to marketing, they took pictures of the home, but it looked like it was taken with an iPhone from maybe 2012. And it was not a professional photo shoot is what my point is. There was not very many pictures, and the pictures made the home look dramatically worse than it actually did. And this particular home has a beautiful view of Lake Mission Viejo. Couldn't tell you that from the pictures whatsoever. So terrible actual marketing, but the preparation was arguably worse than the actual marketing was itself. Now, when I say marketing, the pictures that were taken, there was no marketing for the house. There was a for sale sign, which wasn't even compliant for realtors, besides the point. But that for sale sign, I don't think popped up until it was on the market for 2 months. There was zero, I think they did one open house on the entire 5 months that it was on the market, and there was no advertising whatsoever. And once the home finally got on the market after slashing price over and over and over and over, the only other thing I didn't mention on this is it was dramatically overpriced before the property got put on the market. So if I was to summarize this whole thing, they did absolutely no preparation. They didn't even clean the place on the inside or the outside before they put it on the market. That's the preparation problem number one. The other preparation problem was they chose to dramatically overprice the property to begin with, way above market value. And they did nothing to the home to make it more desirable. So that was before it hit on the market. That's preparation. When it comes to putting it on the market, there was no initial launch campaign to let everybody know about the listing. I live in the neighborhood and didn't even know, and I'm in the business. There was no open houses, so there's no easy access to the property. There was no advertising to show the neighbors that it was available. So that when it came to actually selling the property, go figure, not very many people saw it, not very many people looked at it. The pictures looked terrible online, so even fewer people saw it in person. And probably, frankly, when the people got there, they were like, gosh, I can't believe they listed the home like this. And what a beautiful view, and it's actually a pretty nice house. So what ended up happening, the end result was it was on the market for about 5 times longer than the average, and it sold for 10% below market value. Now, I hope that the seller got a really good deal on commission, because they lost $150,000 in their equity with how the sale was handled. Now, maybe it was the seller's choice, it wasn't the agent's fault, whatever. But the reality is, even if there was a zero fee for the agent to do the job that they did, it cost the seller $150,000. So even if at this price point they were to pay a full boat commission of 4%, they lost way more than that in the actual sale of the property. The seller did. So the reason for telling this story is oftentimes people say, you get what you pay for, but it's not always the case. And I'm going to say this second story to drive that point home. But sometimes people do save a little bit of money on commission, or maybe a lot of money on commission. I'm not saying that commissions aren't cheap by any stretch of the imagination. They're expensive. It's a lot of money. However, even if there was a $60,000 commission paid on this deal, the seller lost more than double of that, 3 times that amount of money almost in lost proceeds from the sale, even if there was no commission whatsoever, which I would guarantee there was some sort of commission. All right, that was just one story. Now, the second story that I want to share with you is we have a listing and we received an offer from a buyer. And before we could even receive the offer from the buyer's agent reached out to us and said, hey, I don't know how to fill out the contract, which is frightening to begin with. And the reason I'm driving these 2 stories home is to show how big this gap is. And we see it as real estate agents because we're in the business all day long. However, most consumers spend very little time interviewing and picking the agent that they're going to work with. This is the reason that I'm making this video. I probably should have said this at the beginning, but if you're still watching, thank you. Like and subscribe to the channel, all the things. But this is the reason I'm making this, is so few consumers really put effort into choosing the agent that they're going to work with and hiring to work with them and paying them a large sum of money. Like I said, commissions aren't cheap. So I know this for multiple reasons. One, from stories like this, real world, but also most of our business is generated from online or referrals. And the reason that I say the online portion, the only reason it matters to you, is we as a company are very, very, very rarely the first real estate agent somebody's talked to. And we are very, very often the last real estate agent somebody talks to, because they deal with somebody else and they say, okay, maybe this is what it looks like to work with a real estate agent. And then they come and work with us and they're like, wow, this is a very different experience in a better way. I should make that clear. Is we try to show what it looks like to work with us before we ever ask anybody to hire us, which frankly is exactly why I make content like this. So I want to make sure we're educating you as the consumer as much as possible. So let me tell you this second story. So the second story is we received an offer on our listing, and before the agent was even able to write up the offer, they had to get on a 3-way call with the buyer, the buyer's agent, and the listing agent, because the buyer's agent didn't know how to write the contract. Frightening. But anyway, we did. We helped them figure out how they were going to write the offer. They sent the offer to us, and it was missing, let's say, half of the check boxes. One of the check boxes is the buyer hired the buyer's agent. Buyer is agreeing to the fee of the buyer's agent, which in this circumstance was 5%, which is double what we would charge any client that we were representing on the buy side. So when we asked the agent to say, hey, can you show us your representation, your buyer representation agreement, which is, for the record, what you have to have legally in order to write an offer or even show somebody a house. So if you reached out and said, hey, Christian, we want you guys to show us a house, we'd say, fantastic. We work with a free touring agreement, so we can just go look at a property, or we can go look at homes for the first 7 days. No cost, no obligation whatsoever. We want to show what it looks like to work together before we would ever ask for your business. And then from there, we would talk about what our next steps are, which is setting up a buyer strategy session, which is where we share everything we do with our clients to save them tons and tons of money and keep them protected. This is obviously if you're a buyer. And then from there, you choose if you want to hire us or not. And if you do, fantastic. And if you don't, hey, that's fine too. There's a lot of other agents out there. But anyway, so we asked the real estate agent, the buyer's agent in this circumstance, to, hey, send us your buyer agreement showing proof that the buyer hired you to pay that 5% fee. And his response was, what is a buyer's agreement? So not only is this buyer's agent obviously have no idea what they're doing. They're charging more than roughly double the rate for representing a buyer. And the icing on the cake, he didn't even check the box asking for that commission. So if he had accepted the offer, he wouldn't even have got paid anyway because he doesn't know how to fill out an RPA. And the worst icing on the cake is he told us or shared with us that if we didn't accept the offer with his 5% commission, that he would just take the buyer to a different house. The sad part here is the buyer obviously is the one getting screwed. And the seller in this circumstance, the buyer seems to want to buy the house and the seller wants to sell the house. And the deal's really not that far off, other than there's this massive roadblock in the way of an agent that just frankly doesn't know what they're doing. So again, this is the reason we make so much content like this to educate you, buyers, sellers, investors, anybody in the marketplace that is looking to become a better buyer or become the most educated so that you can be protected and confident through the entire process. That's what we're all about. That's why we make this content. And I share this because I don't know how accurate this was, but generally speaking, 50% of real estate agents every year sell one or fewer homes, meaning half of the agents in the marketplace sell 0 homes a year. And that means you as a consumer walking around and just hiring whoever you talk to, you have a 50% chance of hiring somebody that has not done a deal in the last year or has done one deal in the last year. So in that gap, I saw a report this last year that it was 72% or something of real estate agents did not sell a house in 2024. Now, I absolutely believe that. However, I don't know the validity of those numbers, but it's a lot. Like, it's more than 50%. So my point for telling you these two stories, the gap is widening between great real estate agents and most real estate agents. And you have the choice to hire whoever you want to represent you through your entire buy, sell, or investing. Whatever it is that you're looking to do, you have the choice to hire whoever you want. So my advice to you is, if you're not hiring us, which is fine, I would prefer you did, but if for whatever reason you don't feel like we're a good fit to work together, please make sure you are making sure who you do choose and you do choose to hire absolutely knows what they're doing, because it costs buyers and sellers tons of money all the time. So if you want to learn a little bit more of what it looks like to work with us here at Onyx Homes, you can go to allaboutoc.com, drop your information, and we'd be more than happy to help you with your home sale, or even just get on a discovery call to figure out what next step might make the most sense for you. So if you want to do that, go to allaboutoc.com. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.